Hello everybody, this is your social studies video for Thursday. Last we left off, we were talking about the French and Indian War on page 133, talking about a young George Washington and his defeat. So just to review, a war breaks out between Britain and France over the territory by the area they call the Ohio River Valley, right to the west of the Appalachian Mountains. So on this map, this is where they're arguing over. This is the French in green, and this is the British in yellow. And we have Indians, or as we call them today, Native Americans, fighting on both sides. Some fighting for the French, some fighting for the British. Different tribes fighting for different countries. And then we went into the first military campaign, and that was had to do with George Washington. So the 1753, it said the British sent a small force into the region. There's a region where a bunch of French soldiers built up forts, okay? In Pennsylvania, there's a bunch of forts they built around here. And then, they said, the British said, let's send some people to build our own Fort Necessity. Okay, and that's where George Washington and a few of his men came and built their own fort. And unfortunately, for him and his men, French soldiers and Native Americans attacked the fort, and the British were defeated. Luckily, the French allowed Washington and his surviving soldiers to return to Virginia unharmed. They didn't take them as prisoners. Okay? And then you guys had to complete the timeline of the events leading up to the French and Indian War on page 133, where it shows a picture of young George Washington, okay? So, we know the French and British claimed the same land in Ohio River Valley. The French build all these forts, these military forts, to kind of establish themselves as owning that territory. The British established a trading post, meaning they create a trading post, place to trade with other with Indians and other nations. We know that's attacked by the French and destroyed. And then finally, the French defeat Washington at Fort Necessity with the help of Native American allies. So that's kind of how the timeline went. Okay? So now we're going to move to page 134. Okay? I'm going to read through it. You could follow along. It says the British win. Okay, so now in 1755, 2 years later, the British returned, hoping to capture Fort Disguise. I always have trouble pronouncing this. Dissequin. It's a French name. This time they sent General Edward Braddock. Washington served as his advisor. French and Native American fighters defeated the British again, killing General Braddock. The effort to capture the fort failed once again. The British lost many early battles. For a while, it seemed like they would lose the war. Then, in 1757, British leaders sent reinforcements from Europe. Made stronger, the British army at last took control over Fort Dissequin in 1758. The Iroquois decided to join the British side. This new force was unstoppable. So the Iroquois were fighting, if you remember, they were fighting with the French. But now they see the British starting to win some battles, and they switch sides. Okay, it's kind of like, reminds me of, I know a lot of people watch football. There's some people that they say are hardcore fans, and they like their team no matter what, win or lose. And there's some people that when a team is winning, they're with them, and then when another team starts winning, they jump on the bandwagon and they go to the other team and they become fans of the other team. So that's kind of like what the Native Americans were doing. They're like, okay, the British are winning, so let's hop on that side, okay? Kind of whatever is best for their own interests, okay? So the Iroquois decided to join the British side, and this force was unstoppable. In a key 1759 battle, the Allies captured Quebec, the capital of New France, and then the next year, the British captured Montreal, which was another French settlement in present-day Canada. Montreal is another, it's still in Canada. The French and their allies had been beaten. In 1763, France and England signed a treaty, which is a formal agreement between countries. France agreed to surrender much of its territory in North America east of the Mississippi River. Okay, so this is beginning of the British pushing further west and gaining more territory, okay? The Ohio River Valley was now under British control. This upset many Native Americans. They knew that more colonists from the east would soon arrive. Unlike the French, British settlers built towns and roads, changing the land. In 1763, an Ottawa leader named Pontiac took action. He led an army that attacked British forts and villages in the Ohio River Valley. So Pontiac was a leader of the Ottawa tribe, another Native American tribe, and he tried to, he attacked the British forts and villages because he wanted them out of there, okay? So after much fighting, the British crushed Pontiac's rebellion. Still, the outbreak alarmed many British leaders, and the fighting had been very expensive. King George III issued a formal order. It was called the Proclamation of 1763. It blocked colonists from settling lands west of the Appalachians. The king hoped this order would keep peace with the Native Americans, okay, because he doesn't want to have to pay more money for more fighting and fund an expensive war. The proclamation upset colonists because they were eager to settle in the Ohio River Valley. Many of them pushed west despite the order, so they defied the king, okay? They didn't listen to him. This added to a growing strain between the colonies and Great Britain, okay? Number 5 asks you to explain what effect the Proclamation of 1763 had on colonization. Well, legally, it blocked colonists from settling lands west of the Appalachians, just as it says after the Proclamation of 1763. However, the colonists didn't listen to this proclamation, so it really had little effect on colonization. They still settled there despite, the king's order not to. So you could write that it blocked colonists from settling lands west of the Appalachians. However, colonists didn't listen and still settled there anyway. Okay? This is going to be the beginning of, like they said, a growing strain, meaning a conflict between colonists, people that came from Great Britain and are technically under British rule of the king, but they're here in America and they're not liking his orders and his rules, okay? Number 6, it says describe at least 3 details to support the following main idea. The British and French fought to control North America in the mid-1700s, okay? There's a lot of details we could put in there. You could talk about the war between Britain and France, how France was winning, the first half of it, before the British finally had some victories. You could write about the Native American involvement, Metacom and King Philip's War, You could write about the defeat of George Washington and his men. You could write about Pontiac's rebellion. Okay, so those are all details, ideas I'm giving you guys, details that would support the British and French fought to control North America in the mid-1700s. All these mini battles within this French and Indian War, okay? So look back through your reading, and or you could take some of the ideas that I just gave you and write three details to support that the British and French fought to control North America in the mid-1700s, okay? And then next week, we're going to start a new chapter, okay? So we're going to go over a study guide. We're not going to have a test because it's too many lessons, but I'm going to go over all these, everything that we learned so far in lessons 1 through 4, okay? Because it's really important that you understand what happened, what was going on in the colonies and between the British and other European powers at the time. Because this is going to take us into what we call the American Revolution when we become a country, okay? How, like I said, there was conflict between colonists, people that settled in North America that were originally from England, or maybe their fathers or grandfathers were from England, and they're settled here in America, okay? They immigrated here. And so there's disagreements between the colonists and the king and the rules he's making, okay? So that's kind of where we're headed, and that was today's lesson, okay? So thanks for watching, and we'll pick up with social studies next week, okay? Thanks.